Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the show, The Sabbath at Midnight. I am your host, Lionel Tavares, and as always, extremely blessed to be here. And today we have a very special show lined up for you. We're going to be talking about Nephilim, giants, and you know me, it's always an obsession with me. I mean, it's just, there's nothing more exciting or more fascinating than it's just imagining something was walking around 10, 20, 30 feet tall with all kinds of, you know, super abilities and super kind of technology. I mean, the list goes on, all the different things that have been found in studies, up to the bones, to the artifacts, to the weapons. And we have someone here today. Her name is Sharon Day, and she's a specialist at this kind of stuff. And I'm going to let her introduce herself and, you know, tell us about herself and how she got into the giants and all that information. So please, ma'am, whenever you're ready, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you got into all this.
Okay. I'm Sharon Day, and I run a blog, a number one blog called Ghost Hunting Theories. And I've kind of become a researcher of everything unexplained. I question everything, and then I question the answers. So I like to throw a lot of information out, let people kind of come to their own conclusions. I give them a lot of links, a lot of information that they can go chase their own answer. They don't have to come to the same conclusion. But it started out, I grew up in a haunted Civil War hospital. It was used by both the North and the South, and spent my childhood digging up relics. And it was considered one of the most haunted houses in America. And as a rather logical child, I would study the activity and kind of wonder what causes it and what relieves it. And then later on in life, it kind of led me on a path where I ran into things like witnessing UFOs. And one time hiking in the Sierras in my 20s, I saw Bigfoot. And before that time, really, it was before the internet. And really all I knew was there's supposedly a gorilla running around Washington State. And I was in California, and I'm thinking, I can't be seeing this. What's it doing here? And then I thought to myself, wait, that's not a gorilla. That's very human. So it made me ponder things. Eventually, about a decade later, I started really, really diving into research of all things. But my focus on Bigfoot led me to ancient giants, and it was sort of twofold. There was one contingency in Bigfootery that wanted to kill one to prove it. And once again, being logical, I thought, well, if I could prove its lineage, then that should satisfy. It didn't just come from nowhere. Yeah. There was another contingency that thought they could do all sorts of magical things. And I generally scoffed at that until I accrued enough evidence that I thought they have something different. They're what I call toggling. And then the people who believe in the Nephilim from the Bible, that actually began to make some sense, because here you would have a being that's made for this world, but also partly from another world. Mm-hmm. And they could go back and forth, but they don't fit in either place. Yeah. And so they would always be on the outside, kind of hiding out and ashamed. So that interested me. But wanting to know their lineage, I thought, well, I need a real world lineage. They have bones, they have skin, they're biologic. We have to explain where they came from. And the only other skeletons we had that were this size were the ancient giants. And I hadn't thought to correlate the two, because ancient giants had civilizations. They were obviously advanced and intelligent. But then if you listen to the native culture, they were either killed or driven off. So then they had to go into hiding by an overpopulated humanity. And so it started to make sense why they hide. It also makes sense that they had hair-covered bodies. And there's a couple reasons, but the main one that I see is they're living ferally. And you take a human and they live ferally, and they will grow thicker hair on their bodies. But I also think they have a DNA lineage that I'll talk about more that explains why they're hairy.
Yeah. So, I definitely agree. I also do believe there's also different types of races of giants, like different kind of, some have in the Bible, as you said, some of the names of these giant tribes have different names, and some of them mean long necks, some of them mean the hairy ones, some of them mean the shining eyes ones. So all these different characteristics with these giants. But before we get into that, I wanted to ask you, because you told me you were finding artifacts as a kid, And you kind of remind me of how I grew up. I grew up on a haunted ranch, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, a very haunted ranch. And we have a whole.
I want to grab my metal detector right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did a whole podcast on with Tony Merkel talking about my experiences growing up on this ranch, and I was finding artifacts too. But the artifacts I were finding were Indian arrowheads and Indian pottery all over the place. Seeing orbs flying around in the sky, UFOs, big triangle ones, little orb-looking ones. And we were also finding a plethora of ancient fossils of sea creatures like seashells, fossils of fishes. So wherever we're at, I don't know what happened. The Indians were there. They got drowned, or maybe the Indians were there after the flood. I have no idea, but the place was hot. So my question is, again, what did you find? You said you were finding artifacts as a kid.
Well, the house that I lived in was built in the 1750s, and it was originally built as a fort to protect against the natives that were, fighting. So the windows upstairs were slanted so arrows couldn't be hitting people in the home. It was built on top of a wellspring, which I think is part of what I would call the haunted formula. The walls of the basement were built with rock, but most of it was quartz. So we have running water, we have quartz, we have a really good geology. We have a history of a lot of death there. The wood floors were still stained with blood.
Oh, wow.
Having both sides die there and go through agony created quite an interesting feel to the house. And even the North, when they had the house and they were using it, they built a fort there. So there was also a lot of fighting, and there were cannonballs in the walls and all kinds of stuff. So I found a lot of native evidence. We had a huge showcase. The bottom shelf was native things that we had found, and then and even some dolls that had been constructed and such. And then the other shelves were the Revolutionary War, and then a lot of Civil War shelves. And I think there was one shelf from the early 1900s too. I found, tin soldiers and porcelain dolls. We found a lot of gun parts. We just threw bullets and cannonballs back in the ground because we already had too many of them.
Oh, wow. Is that many? Wow.
It was a very active site.
That's how much. We didn't find a lot of arrowheads, but the pottery was so much pottery. There was no point of taking it to the house anymore. It's like, what are we going to do with all this? If you want some, just go outside and dig an inch, you'll find one. But that's how it was too. We had a plethora of pottery. Once in a while, you find a nice little arrowhead, but it was mostly pottery. And just.
How were you able to identify what tribes they were?
I believe it was the Yaqui Indian tribe. They said the way the arrowhead was carved a certain way, the way they did it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But then again, we found another arrowhead and they would say, well, this one doesn't look familiar. So, we never got a full answer, but for a fact, those were as an ancient Indian burial site. Another thing too, if you were to dig in some areas as little as a foot and some places as much as 5 feet, the entire ground was completely burnt as 10 acres big. The entire ranch was burnt under the sand. It was really weird. I have no idea how that happened, but the entire ground was burnt under the sand.
Well, you think about it, if they just even had a lightning strike, there's no fire department to put it out back then.
Yeah,
so
that too, yeah.
Could have been just a massive burn. Wow. The Yaqui, though, that's interesting. Wasn't the last wild Indian found from that tribe?
Yeah, I
think he was the
so.
last survivor.
Yeah. So, we never know what happens. Like you said, like we're trying to figure it out ourselves, So, back to going forward with the giants and stuff, I would like to, ask you, what is, as far as the giants go, what is the most, intriguing story that you've got into that you really sent you down the path? I mean, was it some biblical narrative? Did you, run into someone that, found some bones or, something like your most compelling story that you like about this?
As a researcher, I can be in like a lot of, I go down a lot of rabbit holes, and I went down the rabbit hole of the natives talking about these giants, and either they revered them and thought they were highly advanced, or they thought they were cannibals and evil. So that kind of had me pondering it a little bit. I think it was probably the Lovelock Cave in Nevada that kind of attracted my attention, being a redhead.
Yeah.
These redheaded giants supposedly were cannibalistic. Yeah. But I found that theme in so many cultures, that there were these cannibalistic giants and that the natives had cornered them in a cave and just smoked them to death, basically by burning brush in the opening of the cave. The Aborigines have the same story of two women doing that to a giant as well. cultures that aren't even related to each other. I guess, you have to use what you can back then. And also tells me that probably these giants utilize caves a lot. And then the present day, we have the legend of the Kandahar giant that apparently the military attacked in, I think it was Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And that I would have, gone, oh yeah, nice story. But that where the cave area is attached to a range that goes all the way up into Tibet. And that's an area that would still have giants.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was feasible that one was still alive in that area. And I think we also might find them still down in the Solomon Islands.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before. There's a really good book called The Mystery of the Solomon Islands. That book blew my mind. I don't know if you heard of it, but it's about a guy, supposedly a true story. He went out there to, I guess to go find, I guess he heard a rumor there's gold and jewelry, stones and all, islands made of stones and emeralds and all this crazy stuff that he was going out there to go check out. And when he went out there, he ended up being more intrigued about these giant people that he was seeing out there. And I guess there were some giant tribes left, and he's even talking to them. They even have names, and there's supposedly one, and this was supposedly written back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, and I have to look it up again, but he even goes to a story that says you can look this up and like on history of news articles. One of the giants that he befriended, I guess this giant, though he described it, had a little bit of giant DNA, but he was still big enough to not look like a full human because he was only about 6'5", but as you know, their bodies are way different than a 6'5". A 6'5" basketball player, usually tall, lanky. This guy's 6'5". His shoulders were the size of 3 heads. You know what I mean? Big muscles, big arms, and not moving. You know how basketball players, they kind of move. Tall people in general, they kind of move awkwardly. No, this guy was running as fast as a guy who was 5'10", 120 pounds, but as a giant. And I guess they signed him up to do a boxing match in Australia. And this is where you could look up the news article. I have to find it again. But when they took him to the boxing match to, because this guy knew you could take him to a boxing match and win any bet because this guy's going to destroy everybody. This giant punched the guy in the chest. Everybody, whole room of people saw this at the boxing match. He punched the guy in the chest one time, and the giant's hand went through his fist, and he died instantly. So then they had to just, hey, no more boxing for this guy. He's too dangerous. But you can look up that. I'm gonna find that story for you. I'm gonna put a link on it on the episode. But anyways, I thought that was a very interesting book. I think you should check it out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, my father was in World War II in the Pacific Fleet. And he said that they, as they went past Solomon Islands, and I guess they passed the Solomon Islands a few times, but he said every time they always had directives not to land, not to get supplies. Don't go there. There's giants there. So even then, in the 40s, they knew something about that.
And the same guy said when he was, because he met a whole tribe of them, and they were like trading them. I guess they started getting them to like tobacco. The giants were starting to trade knowledge and stuff for tobacco. They were getting, I guess, addicted to smoking out of the pipes, I guess. And I guess, at one point, some of them got mad and they were shooting arrows, and they said the arrows would go through a palm tree. Boom. Like these arrows were huge. So if it would hit a human, it would just tear you in half. This is how strong these things were. And this is all in the Solomon Islands where this supposedly happened. And this guy even goes on to say that in the sky at a certain time of day, like clockwork, there would be this big giant snake UFO going through the sky, and it was glowing. There's all kinds of stuff in that book. It's very interesting, to say the least.
Yeah. It's amazing. And if you look at the legend of the Kandahar giant, it sounds exactly like what you're describing, where even these men physically couldn't take this thing down.
It's too strong. Yeah. And then he even goes into detail how they were breeding. He was saying that, because some of these giants were huge, and for obvious reasons, they couldn't fit into a woman. So what these giants were doing, they were making the adolescent giants mate with women. So basically, before maybe they were 10, 11 years old, they're already 6 foot, but still not big enough. I mean, still small enough to mate with the female. They go into all kinds of details on how they were keeping their little genealogy alive. But this was apparently this is almost 100 years ago or 100 years ago. when this happened.
Yeah, you know, Peru even has a legend of the giants having come to their shores long ago, and they said that they tried to mate with the women and they killed the men, and they just caused massive devastation. They also said that while they were there, these giants had dug wells and lined them with some kind of, some kind of a sealer that looked a little bit like tar, and everybody's like, yeah, sure, yeah, nice legend. They said that they were taken down by God's fire for sodomy and other stuff.
Yeah,
so
I actually have.
But what's so funny is that, here nowadays, like the Nevada Lovelock Cave, the guano farmers dug up these skeletons. So that legend wasn't a joke. And in Peru, they recently dug up the wells and found them lined with something.
Yeah, I even I have the whole documentary of all the diaries of the conquistadors. Cesar de Leon talks about that.
Yes,
and he says the story goes that because they didn't bring women with them, the giants, so they were trying to mate with the human women. They were too big, killing them, raping them to death, and they started turning to sodomy. They started sleeping with each other, the giants, and they were doing it out in the open for everybody to see. So it wasn't like it was just in the middle of the street, I guess. And this is the story of all the natives and all the conquistadors of what was happening. So I guess this was being practiced so much that something shiny out of the sky came, and it was a handsome Caucasian-looking man with armor and a sword, and he pointed the sword at the two giants who were in the act of sodomy, and he burnt them to death with the sword, and they were killed in the act. So, their skeletons were still in the act of sodomy, and it was, the story goes, that was for God as a testimony. This is what happens when you do this kind of stuff. That's the story. So.
Yeah, it's intriguing. I mean, we find a real blend of real potential, if you want to say evolutionary, conceptualized earlier civilization, or we also see that this always weaves in and out with religion.
Yeah.
And I think we have to maybe move the concept of religion to a whole new level where it's a science. It's just one that we aren't in our form allowed to take apart and observe. So we have to take it on faith because we can't actually prove it scientifically, but it is there and it does affect us. And I think we realize that, like, when you love someone, that's not an actual, physical thing you can measure, but it's an act of faith, and it has a result in the person who's being loved as well as the person who's doing the love.
I like that. I'm going to say that to my next girlfriend. That's a good one.
There you go.
Because you don't love me. How do you know I don't love you? I'm telling you that I love you. You know those arguments. You don't love me.
I come home every night. Come on.
So moving forward, I wanted to get into this article that you have on your page, The Giants of Anatolia. Is that how you say it? Right here. It's on your page. It's the ghost hunting theories. It's a whole article that was posted on March 4th, and it's talking about these giants. The Anatolia giant is a large peninsula with the Mediterranean Sea to the south of the Black Sea.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What is this all about?
And we do have some really, if you look at any megalithic site, you're going to find evidence of some other culture that was able to do things that we absolutely either became completely amnesic or lost all the equipment. Yeah. There's another way to do things. I think what we're looking at with these ancients is that they evolved their knowledge naturally using the earth and the elements and what was around them. I think we came along, we saw the skeletons of what they did, the megalithic structures, the canals, mining, and we weren't quite sure maybe what it was for, but we thought, wow, this is cool gadgetry. Let's focus on gadgetry. And we didn't learn that early knowledge that they had that could move blocks and cut blocks and consider things. And I know in the Mediterranean, they have, in Malta, they have structures where they made a scoop inside the rock, and then they had a round rock that went into the scoop, and then another scoop from another wall fit over the other half of the rock. So when there was an earthquake, the whole building moved. Oh. I don't even think engineers today would have thought of that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I didn't know that. It also brings my attention to these giant footprints they're finding in the rocks. They find these giant footprints in rocks. You know what I'm talking about? How do you think that would happen? Was that like some kind of cement? Because the footage, it looks like the rock was soft at one point, and these giants just put their foot in it. kind of like a
I think
sign
it
like
depends
this
on
is
the
our area.
geology too. I mean, you look at sedimentary rocks. I mean, they're basically made from, crushed sea life and seashells. And at some point, it was wet and then it hardened. And so, I mean, there's an opportunity there. But there's a place up in Wyoming called the Birthing Rock, and this one intrigues me. It's a huge boulder up on the mountain, and there's literally hand scoops in the rock as if it had been made of putty.
Okay.
And somebody had just dug their hands into it. And they say that, the legend is that women were birthing, and when they were in pain, they would, grab the rock, and they had dug into the rock. Well,
oh, come on.
That's not how it
Some strong lady.
there is some way we can surpass what we think we know about what solid objects are. And I know there's monks in Tibet. You put them in a cave, and they'll keep putting their hand on a rock until it's completely embedded. It's deep, like they have just literally pushed their hand a few inches in. What is that circumstance? And why do we not remember that? Maybe because it wasn't our knowledge.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And the monks in Tibet, they have a lot of legends too. Apparently the giants live right behind them in the mountains. That's what that's the story.
That if you believe in the concept of hollow earth and the giants that live within there.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's considered one of the openings. Mount Shasta is another one. There's one here in Phoenix, I think, at Superstition Mountains. They have a few places on Earth they think are actually the way to get in to hollow earth.
Do you think, in your opinion, these giants, do you think all the heroes of the old times were actually giants, like Hercules, Achilles? When you read the real history, there were, at least to me, it's kind of written out that they weren't as big as their fathers, but they were pretty big. What's your take on all that right there?
Oh, yeah. I think so. And obviously we know biblically, there's King of Og and the Rephaim. There's a lot of references to this giant culture, and that might possibly be the culture that God was trying to destroy with the flood.
And so with your opinion, do you think, besides these giants that were, humanoid looking, there's also, stories and, not just the Bible and, Greek mythology, you even got, ancient Middle East, Japan, even China, talking about, giant humanoids, but had even, bull heads or lion heads, had a, half serpent, what do you think of those things?
Well,
what do you think those came from?
If you look at the renditions of St. Christopher.
Oh, yeah, the dog head.
Yeah, that's
interesting.
Yeah. And Marco Polo and some of the Chinese explorers, they ran into, Marco Polo in the Andaman Islands ran into a tribe of dog-faced people. A Chinese explorer up in Russia, Lake Baikal, said he ran into a tribe of dog-faced people. So what are these strange variations?
Yeah.
I mean, I could go ancient aliens if we want to get real sci-fi, but, it's possible that at some point, working with the DNA that was here on Earth, the mammals that existed, if you wanted to create an intelligence, maybe impart your own people's intelligence into a creature to make it a smart creature, you might try it with a lot of different DNA that's here. And then you would just let them live it out and see who survives. And that could explain some of these rare dogman sightings or these other weird variations that people talk of. But apparently the apish one survived.
Yeah, and for the people that just think that's dog-headed people, get out of here. Like you said, Marco Polo, Christopher Columbus, what's the other guy that conquered half the world? Alexander the Great, all talked about these dog-headed people they ran into, and it even goes into detail about how they lived, their politics. Apparently these things, the men walked around butt naked, the women kind of covered up, and they would cook, these dog people would cook their food on rocks that were out in the sun, so they'll cook their food in the sun. They even had like trials, someone messed up, people got punished. So they weren't stupid, they had their own, they had their own, their own civilization, their own rules, their own little network, and they would trade too, apparently, with the humans. And a lot of them were in India, apparently. And the history, there was over 180,000 of these things at one point in the Indian mountains and, in India area. So that's very interesting. And apparently
we need to look into native culture a lot more. I know people just kind of go, yeah, it's a legend, blah, blah, blah. But if you really think about it, if you had to pass your information down orally, you have to tell a story that people are going to keep passing down. And I always say, hey, if I had to do that, if we didn't have writing, if we didn't have a way to record stuff, and I had to pass down info, I'd be like, well, Grandma was a really good cook and she liked to make jam, but it's not going to be passed down.
Yeah.
Now, if I said Grandma made jam out of children, that's going to be passed down.
Absolutely.
So we really need to stop, because every one of those legends has a truth in it. They just have a very poetic way of imparting it.
Yeah. And like you said, when you're making a story like that, you're not going to put in the useless information. Grandma made, good jam, strawberry jam. But let's talk about when Grandma beheaded that giant. Let's pass that part down. You know what I mean? So I get what you're saying. You're not going to, the useless information. So I understand that. So, speaking of giants, I wanted to ask you about this because I did a podcast with, his name's leaving my head right now. But anyways, we did a podcast and he went to, let me look it up. Right. Okay. The jars of the giants. So in this area, there's like these jars, these big giant jars and cups. What do you think of all that?
That's in Laos, isn't it?
Yeah. Let me look that up. But my question is to you, what do you, do you have any information on that? What's your story on that? Because those cups are everywhere. They're all over the place. It's like a big bar.
It is so hard. I think I almost want to say there's like a holy trinity that keeps us from further knowledge. It's government, religion, and education. And they all have a vested interest in how we see the world and what we know. And so whenever they see something they can't explain, they're going to have to try to fit that in. I know they were saying that these strange things were funeraries where they would put a dead body inside. There's no evidence of any bones there. There's no reason to think somebody would carve something that extraordinary in that quantity. Where how many liters did they have?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It doesn't look like it's for a human body. It doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you make it that round to put a body like this and have this much space? What, so they could decompose into a drink? I mean, I don't understand it.
Once again, another one of those megalithic things that's a puzzle. I recently had a researcher that I work with for a decade and a half, and he came to me and he said, oh, here, let's go through my evidence from years ago. And I pulled out a picture and I said, where is this? It was a cave, and there were figurines inside the cave. The whole cave had been carved inside, and a little dais had been raised up where the figures sat. And then in the wall, you could see a big hand had been carved into the wall. And I'm like, where is this? And he said, it's in New Mexico.
Oh, wow.
And I said, can I look this up? He goes, no, I found it. It's hidden deeply under a lot of brush. He said it wasn't easy to get to. And he said, I really only stumbled upon it. I was trying to climb the hillside. I noticed all these bushes, but I felt a chill air. He said, so I went behind the bushes and this is what I found. And I said, do you realize what you found?
Yeah.
And he said, I don't know. Somebody put some statues in there. I'm like, no. These are ancient figurines from the Marquesas Islands, 4,000 miles west of Mexico.
Wow.
And they're in a cave near Las Cruces. Like, how do you explain that? That cave has so many puzzles to it, but some culture went all the way across the sea and left some sort of memorial inside there. We're sitting on top of probably more giants not uncovered than have been uncovered. And I know of a few that have been documented. I'd like to go back. I'd like to have those documented live. I have certain criteria. Don't want to touch anything. Don't want to mess with anything. It should stay just like it is. But somebody needs to measure, show, document live. Then when they call the authorities come in. And of course, we have, repatriation where the native culture is going to have to rebury these guys. And that's fine. But what I want a card from the person who's managing the whole system.
Yeah.
And then I want to bother this person and bother them and bother them. And what happened? To show how these things can go missing. I don't want there to be any question that it existed. But I'm also not going to, go cave rob.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything is left as it should be. And I think the native culture understands that. If you find it, just leave it.
Yeah.
You know,
And they even go up into the point where some of these, and actually where I live out here in California, where do you live at again? Where do you?
I'm in Phoenix.
Okay. So you're kind of close by. Out here in California, we have an Indian tribe called the Morongo tribe. And, about 5 years ago, I was working at another gym, maybe 6 years ago. And, I had one of my coworkers was a Native American. He was a personal trainer. And one day I was reading a book. I forgot what book I was reading. Some book on Nephilim or something like that, some crazy book that I was reading. And he kind of just, hey, what are you reading? I was like, oh, I'm reading blah, 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 about Nephilim. Oh, the Nephilim, the giants. He's like, yeah. So I know about those. Up in Morongo, the chiefs, they have a giant skull that we keep secret for everybody. I was like, wait, what? I was like, what giant skull? What do you mean? Like a big cone head looking skull. I saw it when I was a kid. I'm like, bro, you can't just say that so casually. When, where, and how can I see this? He's like, no, man. I was like, I saw that one time as a kid during some kind of ceremony they had. I don't know. I forgot what exactly, but I guess he happened to be there, and they were kind of like, worshiping this skull. And he just said as a big cone head, and he told me a little bit of the lore about it. And it's kind of like the Bibles. The flood happened because they're trying to get rid of all these, these creatures. And it's kind of like similar to the Bible, the way their oral tradition is. And he even went on to say, was very interesting, that supposedly some of them are still alive. They're like asleep. They're like in a stasis mode. That's what he was saying, that the chiefs had told him as a kid until he grew up. So that was very interesting. I mean, I'll pay that guy everything that I have to see this skull, but I doubt he'll do it. But the fact that he just said that, I've never spoken to the guy about giants. I never told him what I believed. Then he just happened to see that I was reading this book, and he just went on and said that. And ever since then, we became friends. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yep. I'm sure there's people sitting on a lot of evidence that either they don't think is significant, or they think people say it was faked, or they don't want attention. Yeah. Or maybe they revere this thing and don't want it,
I think a lot of people are scared.
Sold on the internet in copies. Yeah.
I think a lot of people are scared of all this stuff because they don't want it to be real.
There's a lot of implications when you have to account for a race that we didn't think existed. Yeah. I mean, let's just look at the early days of America when they got the Smithsonian going, and the Department of Ethnology, which was linked to it. And, there was a lot of things that were found that they had just accepted Darwinism. Now what are they going to do? Bring this biblical thing forward? And then how are they going to treat the native people? Because they're supposed to be the first ones here, but even then the natives say, hey, there were other guys here first.
Yeah.
They knew that. I mean, I think we're really arrogant to think that there's only been just us.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the scheme of everything now.
And with everything coming out of the open, like, we're just starting to see more and more evidence of we were just completely taught wrong in school. Just nothing was correct. What really blows my mind, okay, so we have the Native Americans that were supposedly here first. I don't think that's true either. Then now we know that there was giants here as well with the Native Americans. And now we're finding all this new thing going around. A lot of people say it's fake, but the evidence points to otherwise. Is this whole Tartaria mud flood thing. And at first I was like, what is this nonsense? But then you start looking at the old pictures from the 1800s, and all the buildings in America were like this Roman, Greco worshiping, beautiful, like Victorian buildings that we had all over the United States. And then you see a lot of old buildings that are they have like doors that are buried underground. It's like, why would someone build a building with a door that you can't get through? And I seen these buildings as a kid, going to, different places. But when I'm growing up now, I'm like, that is very interesting. So, I mean, with the Native Americans here, and then on top of that, there was also these beautiful mega structures at the same time, along with giants. Or was that before? Was that, it's so interesting now, because a lot of our big places, like even New York, we have buildings built on top of ancient buildings. I mean, you can see the old construction videos. You see these weird old buildings underground. They're, digging, and they're just building right over it.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
Was that built by the giants?
We don't have a good grasp on what's under there. I know, like, just the Grand Canyon, I've been studying it for a documentary I'm writing. But when I was studying it, they call it the Great Unconformity or Nonconformity, because there is a division between the different geologic layers. And there's a missing layer that should be there. Where is it? How did this happen? We have so many things that we take early observations and accept them.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at, even Einstein was thought that the idea of quantum entanglement was spooky things happening at a distance. He didn't want to believe that, but we've proven there is quantum entanglement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe a lot of this quantum stuff is all going to be related to this CERN. They keep using this CERN thing. They keep using that big machine to speed things up. And, I don't know what they're doing with that CERN thing, but we could both, speculate that they are opening a dimension. They're not trying. They have opened a dimension already, in my belief, because things have just been going haywire. We're seeing more things in the sky than we ever seen. We're seeing more creatures now, more cryptids. I mean, people that don't even believe in this stuff are starting to see this and be like, hey, I don't believe in it, but I saw it. Well,
that's one thing I like about The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, they're just sort of letting the public see, look, this has been going on. It's going on in other places too. Just look around you. And I think the accelerated rate at which we're being observed or interacting, or something is punching through or toggling, as I like to say, I think it says that either we have more of an opening now, or we're just ready to see it finally, because we're close to being able to do it.
Yeah. And then I want to even go as far as to say that in my opinion, a lot of the reasons why these bones get taken away, because I think personally we are having a race for the who's going to have the best military as far as super soldiers go, genetically enhanced humans. And I think they are using the bones of the giants and using that DNA and cloning them or splicing them with humans or making their own kind of genetic mutation, because this is not a conspiracy anymore. We know for a fact that China, they even show the pictures of these little embryos of half pig, half human. They're making half monkey, half human. This is not a conspiracy, guys, by the way. You can Google this up. This was back in 2018 when they were doing this. So if they're doing
Russia,
it then, they're doing it now.
And I think even Germany had
Germany
gone
too.
through phases
Mexico.
of wanting to get an ape and a human. I get that. I think nowadays, if we look at it, having a really strong warrior is not going to help, because we're not going mano a mano. We're using chemicals. We're using, atomic bombs. We're using lasers. We're using sound. We have so many ways to destroy without needing a fighter.
That is true. But
and I think in general, the reason we started hiding the bones at the beginning was basically, this is something abomination.
Yeah.
This is something we shall not speak of. We're going to hide this because it goes against everything we know, either in Darwinism or the Bible. So it must go away. Let's not confuse the people. There's natives here and there's us.
Yeah.
And that's all there is.
Yeah.
And then they just had to maintain that. I think what's a shame is now that we do have the ability to look at DNA, it seems like the Smithsonian could come out as like the most amazing hero in the world if they came forward and said, we went through some old, warehouse stuff, found some big bones and thought, hey, now that we have DNA, we can go test it.
Yeah.
And guess what? We found another race, and we're going to have a whole museum of giants, and people around the world will rush there, and they'll be heroes because they named them and they've displayed them and they're not hiding them. But as long as they keep hiding them under their skirts, we're going to get more suspicious, and our conspiracies will get crazier and crazier because it just looks really sketch.
Yeah, it just looks really sketch. And I do believe one day we're going to get to a point where they're going to have to just tell us, because you ain't going to lie to us like that. Like, for example, the whole UFO thing, it's at the point now where they're no longer lying. It's already been out, on Fox News, CNN, whatever. All the mainstream outlets have already done these, what do you call it when they release information?
Oh, the press conferences.
Yeah, they did it in court.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did it in actual court, U.S., in the U.S. court. They were talking about, yes, we found, off-world saucers. So they're admitting, whether that's the truth or not, they're admitting that the saucers are real. They're admitting that there's other worldly beings. That's what they're saying. But the point is that they're admitting there's another humanoid race that's not human, which is a big step for people like us that want to get some. Come on, man.
They're trying really hard not to say it. It's like, we don't know what it is, but it doesn't mean it's alien.
So
I look at it, and there's a lot of stories about UFOs circling around or controlling any kind of radioactive situations, any missile silos or bases or even nuclear submarines. I think what may be going on, and this real possibility, is that the aliens have shown the government, hey, we can shut this stuff down. It's useless.
Yeah.
But we still parade it around because we don't know that Russia also knows they can shut it down, because we're certainly not going to admit our stuff doesn't work, and let other countries know. But I think all the countries must have an agreement and understanding that, you can keep posing as if these are going to work, but they're not going to work. We're not going to let you do that, because it really is going to, we're talking about, beyond subatomic here. The explosiveness of a nuclear weapon, that's getting into what we would, say the quantum. It's affecting other dimensions, other worlds. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I believe anything that happens in the physical world also happens in the spiritual dimension, or the other realm, or the other, whatever you want to call it, whatever you believe in.
We're all quantumly entangled. Yeah. I'm a psychic, and I got to tell you, I spent my whole life going, how do I know this? How do I know that? This is scary. I don't like this. But it was really quantum entanglement that finally made me understand how two could possess the same information at the same time. So
that's, you just kind of came out. I'm interested in that now. So when you said you're a psychic, when did you first start knowing you were a psychic? And just tell me what happened that made you say, man, how did I know that? Or how did I, give me that. I love this stuff. Tell me, I'm very interested now.
Well, as a child, I started using a metal detector when I was about 4. And when we would go out, and I just instinctively think, this area, I need to go here. And so I'd use a metal detector. I'd come home with loads of stuff. I'd bring it to my mom, and I'd show it to her, and I'd be all excited. I'd be like, see this belt buckle? This was, James Fitzpatrick, and he was a reporter. He lived in New York. He had a wife and kids. And, I'd go on, and I'd hand it to her, and my mom would look at it and go, oh, could you clean this up and put it in the cabinet? And I remember thinking, isn't she getting this info? I didn't know that people only get temperature, weight, texture.
Yeah.
I had no idea that they didn't get this information
really quick. Really quick, when you touch, when you get this information, is it upon touching it, and does these words just appear in your head, or what happens?
Well, what it's like is usually metal is the easiest thing to read. So that one, it was a given. Everything I got with a metal detector, I had lots of info. I hold it in my hand, and honestly, when it comes to psychometry, this is the skill. Usually the hand that you read with is the one you don't write with. So I was holding it in my left hand, and I would start to get first an atmosphere, a mood, like day or night. I might get images of someone, a name suddenly hits me, or a word. And then there's all these connections. And the only way I can describe it is when they talk about mind speak with aliens. And I've had lifelong contacts, so I know what this is like. It's exactly like a psychic read. You get knowledge, and then you interpret it in your own comparisons and wording. So there's no language. There's just, suddenly I know what you know. So now I have to, it's like coming into a party late, and you're trying to figure out who's fighting and why they're fighting. I got all this info, and now I got to figure out, where does it go? What does it mean? What does it mean to the person I'm reading? And to me, like dead people are over your right shoulder, live people are over your left shoulder. So I've started to learn over time how to differentiate, but I honestly did not know I was psychic. I thought psychics were people that read palms or tarot cards, tell you the future. I was reading things from the past. So, and I wasn't going around saying, hey, what do you read from this? I assumed everyone else was getting this info. So I was in my 20s, and a friend let me borrow her leather jacket. It was a cold night, and I put it on. And then all of a sudden, I don't know why, just all this information came. And I'm like, your boyfriend, he's been going out every other weekend. And, he's suddenly cut his hair, and he's got a new car. And she's like, how do you know all this? And I thought, I don't know. I just put the jacket on.
She's going to blame you.
Yeah. Well, she knew all this stuff already, but she hadn't told me any of this. She's like, the jacket, you put the jacket on, and that was it. And so she goes, could you read my watch? And so then I got a bunch more from her watch. And it dawned on me that she's not getting this stuff. And this is some kind of skill, but I didn't know about psychometry. But you look at where I grew up. From the time I was a baby, I was in a house that saw a lot of history. And it was on top of a wellspring, with a basement made of quartz. And I was digging up objects. And it's almost a destiny that I would, before I could be old enough to just look at it like an artifact. I looked at it like an energy. Everything had energy. And I still have that ability. Buildings, rooms, the outdoors, everything has an energy. It all has life. Even rocks have life. And it's sad. I wish I could give that to other people, because it's sort of like learning that everyone's colorblind. And now you got to explain what color is.
I would love to have that ability. Jeez, I would love to have that. And just this is a very serious question. How is your diet? Because I heard that a lot of what we eat is also blocking that extra wave that we have, that sixth sense, or how to say. So just a question, do you have
I can tell you exactly how anyone can be a psychic. It might just be for a few hours, but they can be a psychic.
Okay.
And I learned this running my ghost hunting team. We would go to a location. I was the only psychic. Everyone else was very logic-minded, but curious. Or maybe they saw something as a kid and now they want to know what it was. But we went into a location, and that night everything was very active. At least everyone was reporting, I got touched, something tugged on my shirt, I saw a shadow. They had they'd go, wow, the ghosts were active tonight. And I'm thinking, they were no more active than usual. Like these things around us, they're there all the time. But for some reason that night they could perceive it. So I went and I did a little research. I started writing down every time we went, what time we went, and then, like how active it was. And then I went on to the space weather site. When we have solar flares, we get a thing called a geomagnetic storm that hits Earth. And the geomagnetic storm actually affects your pineal gland, which is called the third eye. It has a little bit of magnetite metal in it. It floats around in your cerebral spinal fluid deep in your brain. But it's also responsible for, it's hooked up to your optic to see if the light goes down, and then it tells your body release melatonin. But it has a lot of other qualities that control hormones. And so I started to wonder, do I have a better pineal gland or better communication with my pineal gland than other people have? Because on the nights when there was a geomagnetic storm, we had an active night 100% of the time. And anytime we did not have a geomagnetic storm, it was not an active night. So these people suddenly became better perceivers of what's always there.
Yeah. And I would even I'm just throwing this out there, because I know you're a redhead, right? Yeah. And from what I read, you guys are the most rarest, look on Earth, the rarest DNA. Have you ever maybe looked back at your DNA and see where you come from? Maybe you come from some kind of powerful psychic. I'm not even joking. I'm being very serious. My last name,
I go by Dave because my dad changed his name coming to America, but I'm 75% Scandinavian and 25% English.
Look at that.
My father's people were all had some intuitive, different kinds of intuitive. It seemed to run through the family. But I had my DNA done by Ancestry.
Yeah.
It came back with 25 chromosomes.
Wow. That's very interesting.
And it's a little intriguing because, even though it's not something I've ever wanted to share, but I think I have to share because there's others of me out there. I've been a contactee my whole life with the Greys. And my earliest contact when I was about 4 or 5, basically he let me know that he gave me things others don't have. And that I would go through a lot of trials in life before I start using those things. And then I would have a mission. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think much of it, but I have a lot of kind of strange, I've got the psychometry. I have pretty much every psychic skill across the board, but psychometry is my primary. I have genius level IQ. I have facial amnesia, which is kind of unusual.
What is that?
But now I have the inability to picture any face. If I close my eyes, I don't know what I look like. I don't know what my son looks like. My parents, I can't picture anyone. Even in my dreams, when I'm dreaming, I never even look up at the face because I won't know who it is. I know their energy. That's how I know who they are.
Wow.
And I think that might have been a reason why I have that unusual skill, is so I don't get distracted by the visual, that I actually read the energy. And that's part of being a healer too, is to understand those energies. So, it's a very unusual.
No, you're full of surprises. Life. No, I didn't. That's amazing. I didn't know all this extra information about you. My dad just told me, hey, I have this podcast with this lady. I can't do it because I'm sick. Jump into it. And I was all right, but I didn't know any. This is very interesting.
Yeah, it takes me to whole new levels too now. Of course, I'm trying to find someone who can evaluate if they think they have alien DNA or if they think they have DNA that's been manipulated by abduction. I would love to have my DNA compared because I shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. And that's a big question. What's intriguing is when the day I was born, my dad left a very secret government job, and he had a card that basically said, put me on this plane, don't ask questions. And my mom couldn't know what he did. We didn't know what he did. But the day I was born, the government put him the head of USPS in D.C., and so he suddenly had a new job, and I was born. But I was born to a mom who had had cancer and had extensive surgery, and they said, you'll never have another kid. Well, I come along, and I have all kinds of weird, exceptional qualities. And then when I'm 17, I get the same cancer, and I have the same surgeries. And I'm told less than 20% chance I'm going to have a kid. And I had my son, and his IQ is 30 points higher than mine.
Wow.
He's 172. I'm 145. And he is very psychic, but he will not deal with it. He's very logical. No, I don't want to go there. I don't want to.
Oh, he's fighting it.
He has it, but he doesn't want to use it.
He's fighting it. Man, that's very interesting. Your DNA
I guess the question is, was I manipulated? Was there an agreement? Was there something going on there?
I would say so. I'll say 55 yes, 45% maybe. I'm definitely on the higher side. Like I said, I asked you about your DNA. You answered me that you have an odd number of chromosomes. You know, I already kind of tell me you're psychic, red hair.
Look, I've been in the medical field for 21 years, so I'm looking at the DNA going, okay, wait, am I trisomy 21? What's going? No, I would know if I'm trisomy 21.
Have you?
Somewhere along the line, somebody would have said, Sharon, let's take you aside. You need to know something.
Have you?
So yeah, I'd love to know more about the DNA to see what is in there, or what is repeated, or what is unusually modified. Yeah, it's kind of unusual.
I would want to know that too about myself. And I just wanted to maybe send you down a path if you haven't heard of this yet. Have you ever heard of the Tuatha Dé Danann?
Mm-mm.
So the Tuatha Dé Danann is a whole race of giants too as well. It's the fairy folk, the elves. It's all the
is this the Irish
Yeah,
one?
the Irish.
Okay, yes.
But the way these people looked, they were very fair-skinned. They looked like humans. They weren't, some of them, there were giants, but most of them were just regular humans, regular size, redheaded.
I'm tall. I used to model.
Yeah, hey, I believe it. They had red hair, blue eyes, or green eyes, or blonde hair, blue hair, green eyes. Anyways, they all had the ability of psychic powers. You gotta look this up. The Tuatha Dé Danann is a very interesting genealogy that goes back to the Irish, and that's where all the fairies and the leprechauns and the red hair and all that stuff comes from. Is from the Tuatha Dé Danann, and that kind of goes back into the Bible too. Tuatha Dé Danann, Dana. It's like a goddess. Princess Diana. It goes back to that too. But I think you should go definitely check that out because you look like them. And you have the powers and characteristics of them. I'm not even joking. It's very, very interesting book.
Well, I'm intrigued because I do have a couple of strange skills. I just, I passed them off because I didn't want to deal with them. One is occasionally I've become like a human magnet, and metal will come at me.
Yeah.
And it seems to only happen when I'm really mad or upset. Just some weird qualities that I can't account for. How do I do this?
Yeah. Do you do any, do you have any practice where you do things like, hey, can you tell me where this is from? Do you have any kind of, practice like that open to the public?
No. My problem with doing readings, and I found this over the years, is that once I have opened up that pathway, I walk away, but I still keep getting information. And then their memories become my memories. Now I'm carrying all these lifetimes in my head. Yeah, it can make
you go crazy.
So, to keep it, and as a psychometrist, imagine like going in the store and grabbing an object. I never understood why I would sort through things on a shelf to pick a certain thing no one else had handled much. You have to turn it off. It's the only way you can survive is to just have to turn it on when you want to use it. And so that's, but right now I'm doing a lot of studies on healing. I want to work toward just being a good healer. That I seem to be able to to do that well. And I want to define it better.
Yeah, that's you have a very special gift, and I believe when you have gifts like that, they should be used for the good, of course.
I always say that, when somebody gives you a gift, honor it by using it. If God gave you that gift, you better honor it by using it.
Yeah, absolutely. With that, so here's another question, because I'm very interested with this whole psychic thing. So, for example, is there a way, like, let's say you go to your friend's house and you're talking, you lay on their bed. Could you feel like, oh, your husband's cheating on you? Cause you know what I mean? Like stuff like that. Could you?
Yeah, I can even, I've even
ruined some relationships.
I found out that besides just touching things, I can look at things too. And that's only something I discovered in about the last decade. I can see a photograph and I could tell an awful lot. It's almost as if I'm touching them. And I can be watching the news and they could show a sketch of a serial killer. And I already know his lair. I know his patterns. I know what he's feeling. I'm already there. I've even chased him down to where they live before. Premonitions. Within 24 hours, I will have a premonition of a plane crash, a tsunami, an earthquake. And the thing that I don't like to fly, because I've been down as a witness on a plane in a couple dozen plane crashes. So I know every way a plane can go down and what happens to the passengers. On the plane, I know that they can't see me or hear me. I'm there to witness it.
Yeah.
But I also had to learn I can't do anything. I can't warn anyone. I don't know what plane I'm on. I don't know when it's going to happen. I can't help with that. But for some reason, I have to witness it. And I don't know what that is. It might be a compassionate part of me that I need to be there for those people when they go down. I don't know. Yeah,
that's definitely something that could also make you go crazy too, because you want to save them, but you don't know when or what is happening. It's very
humbling. You have to finally just go, it's already faded. It's in the records already. I can't stop. I'm not Superman. I can't stop fate. It is. If I'm reading it, it already happened, basically.
Okay. Yeah. So another question, how far back can this go? For example, let's say you go to that place where they have the giant jars. If you touch those jars, would you be able to see anything from it? Or is that, or is it, know?
One of the things I use in Bigfootery, and I also use it for ghost investigations, is I can psychically track. So I can walk a path, and as soon as I join up with a path that someone or something else had taken, I can literally walk the path, stop where they stopped, look where they looked, and I can get visions of what they're thinking or feeling or hearing. So I don't know that there's a time limit on that. I mean, some of these artifacts I dug up, they were very, very old. And I think as long as they're another issue I have sometimes is somebody will give me a piece of jewelry and I'll read it, and I'm reading the last person who wore it.
Yeah.
And not the person who owns it. So they had borrowed it or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So I can't sort out where I'm getting it. But if I could get to an ancient site and I could get myself rocks, here's another thing. Rocks put off energy. They don't hold memories. So the rocks aren't going to help me. But if there's something metallic at the site, that would be good. Or even something wooden. It's not as easy to read, but rocks are the only thing that don't hold a memory, which is...
Yeah, that's very interesting. And when you look at all the, all the history and geography, and you look, at what pretty much happens to all living things, creatures, trees, whatever, at the right, with the right conditions, just about anything turns into a rock, so is every single rock a piece of, some animal or tree? That's also something I think about too. Every single piece of rock at one point was something that was not a rock. That's also very interesting, because then you have these stories about, giant snakes that were the size of half of California, apparently, giant dragons. Then you have those, that giant snake cave in Thailand, and it looks like a snake. It has scales, and it even has a head. And it goes around this. Have you seen that before? The big thing. Yeah. And then the story is, the wind did that. Come on, man. The wind picked and chose to just cut little scales, the eyes, everything. I mean, what is that thing? When did that thing live? Because it's obviously a snake. You even have the giant alligator, petrified giant rocks. You have all the big giant trees now. They were starting to see the tree stumps. I mean, you just have a plethora of all these things that's a mystery now. Because now when I look at mountains, I'm like, what was that before, or where did it come from? You know, was it a tree that fell down? You know, we don't know. We don't know what it is.
Yeah, one of the artifacts that one of my researchers gave me to study was petrified, and it was a shoulder joint.
Okay.
But it was a giant shoulder joint. It was twice the size of any average male, and it was smooth. And the bone was broken off. You could see where the bones had broken off.
Yeah.
It was absolutely pristine. But it, once again, there's some evidence. Of course, you can't get DNA from it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
There's a whole guy. He has a YouTube called Mud Fossil University.
Oh yeah, yeah. I know
he's
that one.
always finding little joints and fingers and when you first listen to him, like, this guy's out of his mind. It's just a rock. But then he'll start finding a bunch of rocks with the same pattern. I'm like, okay, well, that's very interesting. This guy says these rocks are shoulder joints, and it looks like a random pattern, but he'll show you 25 more that he has that look just like it. I'm like, well, maybe it is a shoulder joint or something. It's some kind of piece of old organic material.
We don't know what cataclysms occurred before.
Yeah.
I mean, we have enough evidence to know there was a flood, but I mean, think about it. All it would take is, a meteor hitting the earth, causing, things to die off, or, massive eruptions. We had one continent that broke into all the continents we see now.
Yeah. Pangea
yeah. Yeah.
So just one more thing before we get finished here. I wanted to ask you, what is your next step with this whole, just in general, your whole, your website? Are you going to make a book? Are you you said you're doing a documentary. What's next for Sharon?
I already have 24 books published, so I'm pretty done with that. By profession, I'm a screenwriter, and I've got a Western that's about to be made, and another one that I'm on the writing staff that I'm also going to act in. I've got Western horror that I just finished that's kind of fun. But I want to go into documentaries of unexplained too, and there's two production companies I work with here. One does films and one does documentaries. So I have a foot in each door, and I can kind of go either way. But I have a sci-fi thriller series that's going to involve giants.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
We need one. There's none.
And UFOs and Bigfoot.
There's none. There's none out there like that. You'd be the first one. I've always thought, like, when is someone going to make a movie that has giants, werewolves, Bigfoots, and reptile people in one movie? Because people will say, well, that's a werewolf movie. No, in real life, they're all living on the same planet. And I want to see a movie like that.
I came up with a concept and an ensemble cast that would make this extremely feasible. And it would be very chilling because it's going to open some realities to people that, whoa,
Yeah,
yeah.
That would be cool. I think you should do one, and it's just one Native American versus the redhead giants. That would be something that I think it will blow up, because a lot of people that believe in this too don't want to admit they believe it. So for a movie to come out and it's a good movie, people are going to be like, oh, it's a good movie. I always believe, how people just kind of open up when they finally see it in the mainstream.
I think if the Paiute tribe up there in Nevada, if they wanted to do a documentary that involved what their ancestors went through with the redheaded giants, I think that would be a unbelievably exciting thing to watch.
That would be the best movie ever. And if you ever need an actor, I'll do it for free. I used to act. I would love to be part of it. Just throw me in there. I don't care what I am. Yeah. But with that being said, thank you very much. Before we get off here, can you please tell us your website, the books, where to get your books, all that good stuff, please?
Okay. All my books are on Amazon, and you can also find a link in the sidebar of my blog, which is ghosthuntingtheories.com. And on Instagram and YouTube, I'm Sharon Day Life Archivist.
Okay. All righty. So again, thank you very much. I'm very glad I did this podcast with you. You are a very interesting woman, beautiful hair, very smart, very intelligent, and you're a sidekick. I didn't even know that. You're just throwing more abilities at the pot. So you're a very blessed woman. Continue doing your journey. I'd love to do another one with you.
Absolutely. I literally can talk any subject. I've covered everything a lot.
Yeah, I would love to do one on maybe the Hollow Earth or something like that. I was looking at your website. That would be a cool one. I'm obsessed with that too, so I would love to do that. Can I contact you on your Instagram? Is that an easy way to get a hold of you? Just a little DM? Because I added you. Okay. So, really quick, I'm just going to sign off here, but don't hang up yet. I just want to talk to you for a little bit after we get off here. So, thank you everybody for listening to the Sabbath at Midnight. I am your host, Lionel Tavares. Thank you everybody for listening, and also, give a follow, give a like, go check out Sharon Day's her website, check out her books.